Last week of February 2010, and we've just returned home from the hospital. Kez has had a fine needle aspiration of what was thought to be a thyroid nodule, but has now been found to be a large tumour between her windpipe and gullet. It appears to be pressing in on about 3/4 of her trachea, which explains why she's getting so breathless. The sonographer says he has no idea what it is, but that it's bigger than he's showing on the sonograph. Kez begins to cry from pain in her neck and the top of her back during the procedure. The sonographer becomes quite animated at this point, saying the info will be very helpful in making a diagnosis, suspecting it could be a neurofibroma. He's having a meeting with the respiratory consultant on Thursday and hopes the lab results will be back by then. He explains that because of where the growth is, it's going to be difficult to get to, so they need to decide whether it will be dealt with by the cardiothoracic team or ear, nose and throat. All this is starting to really worry me now. I know that Kez is going to need surgery, but my brain is going into overdrive, and I'm concerned about what might happen during or after that surgery if the tumour is a neurofibroma and is connected to any of the nerves in her neck or spine. Of course, we won't know for sure what the problem is until the lab results come back. Later, at home, I find I can no longer contain the tears that have been threatening to fall, as the full horror of what we've seen and heard today starts to overwhelm me. The news just seems to be getting worse, and I believe there's more to come. A few days later, we hear from the hospital. Kez has been referred to a knowledgeable cardiothoracic surgeon from Guy's Hospital in London with good experience of treating neck tumours. We've been assured that she'll refer Kez on to someone else who can help her if she's unable to. After doing some research, I'm reassured by her professional profile and start to feel a little more confident. An appointment is scheduled for the following week, with a warning that the tumour needs to be removed as soon as possible, as Kez's breathing difficulties could quickly become life-threatening. We're still waiting on the lab results from the fine needle aspiration, so remain in the dark as to the exact nature of the tumour. All we know is that it's huge, is being treated as serious, and that Kez is down for priority treatment. On the positive side, we've been told that it can be fixed, that most of the tumour is localised to a specific area, and that it's outside of the trachea. And because we now have that information, we're lulled into a false sense of security, and therefore have absolutely no idea of what's coming next. Unfortunately, neither does the surgeon. By now, the fear is escalating fast inside me, but Kez, despite being fed up, is bright and breezy with the optimism of the young, and tells me not to worry. She's carrying on with her life with the limitations of effortless exhaustion and breathlessness. I don't think she has a clue as to how serious her predicament is, which is probably a good thing at this stage. My main fear is that the growth is malignant, but we won't have a clear answer until it's removed and analysed. I continue to hold on to the fact that she still looks well, and that the only thing that's obviously wrong is her breathing. I'd be more worried if her glands were up and she was lying on the sofa or in bed all day, unable to do anything. The following week, we return from the hospital with the news that Kez cannot live without urgent major surgery. The biopsy findings are suggestive of a salivary gland tumour with no evidence of lymphoma. The precise nature of the tumour is uncertain, and an endoscopic biopsy and bronchoscopy need to be done, so it's still unclear whether the tumour is benign or malignant. A PET scan is also ordered to rule out disease anywhere else in her body. The surgeon tells us it's very rare to see this kind of tumour in someone so young, and believes it's probably been slowly growing over a number of years. 3 specialist teams have been called in to assist. We're shown the CAT scan images which reveal a 4 cm mass. The affected part of the trachea looks like a quarter moon, and one image shows just a tiny hole. Obviously, the concern is that if the tumour grows much more, it will completely shut off the oxygen supply and Kez will die. My understanding is that the tumour is attached to the trachea in some way, but not inside it. If this is the case, and it appears to be so, I'm assuming a resection of the trachea will need to be done to ensure that the entire tumour is removed, and the surgeon confirms this. It's possible the esophagus will also need to be resected. Because of where the tumour is, it's likely that entry can only be gained by going in through the chest wall as well as the neck. The surgery itself poses very little risk to life, less than 5% in someone of Kez's age. We speak about possible post-op complications and likelihood of the tumour growing back. The surgeon tells us her ideal plan would be for Kez to go straight into hospital next week and have everything done, but the problem lies in getting all 3 specialities coordinated in time. Kez is horrified to learn that she's being given priority over other cancer patients, confirming to me that she still doesn't really understand how serious her circumstances are, because the concern is not for herself at all, but for those whose treatment will be delayed. She isn't looking forward to any of this, of course, her main complaint being that she'll be in hospital for a while. But at least she'll be able to breathe properly again, and I think the fact that her breathing has been steadily worsening will mean that nothing can be left to chance. A few days later, on Kez's 19th birthday, we receive a call from Guy's Hospital to say the bronchoscopy is booked for the following day. We need to be at the hospital for 8 AM. The day of the bronchoscopy proves difficult, starting with a 3.5-hour delay for the procedure. Kez has had nothing to eat or drink since 9 PM the previous evening, and is additionally tired from our 5:30 AM start that morning. Her anxiety levels have been high. My brother Jonathan arrives in the afternoon and takes me out for a meal while Kez is in theatre, and I'm able to soothe away the worries with a few glasses of wine. We receive a call to say Kez is back on the ward, and on our return we find her being entertained by her boyfriend Joe, and also his sister and her partner. We notice Kez is coughing a fair bit, and Joe and I both comment on how normal the cough sounds, as previously it could be mistaken for a bark. Kez announces that her breathing is a lot easier. I speak to a doctor who informs me her airway was almost completely blocked, and that a good deal of the tumour has now been removed. It's still unclear where the tumour is attached, and Kez is still going to need major surgery to remove the rest of it, so an appointment is booked to see her surgeon the following week. Just how much of the trachea will need to be removed is unknown at this stage. We're told that once the histology results come through, what is being seen on the scans will start to become clearer. The fact that Kez can breathe so much better now must feel like a reward for all that she has been through so far, and after an overnight stay, she's discharged home. It's a relief to hear her breathing normally, and to see her run upstairs without getting breathless. The next hospital appointment goes well, and the tumour is confirmed to be an adenoid cystic tumour of the salivary gland, which is located both inside and behind the trachea, and is responsive to radiotherapy. The surgeon appears to be unclear at this stage whether it's benign or malignant. We're told it's extremely rare, and hear again that it will have been growing very slowly over the years. Images taken during the bronchoscopy revealed a 2 mm gap between the tumour and the inside of the airway, so it's a miracle that Kez hasn't suffocated already. It's reiterated that the rest of the tumour needs to be removed, otherwise it will just grow back. The surgeon explains that if Kez was about 80, they'd remove the new growth as and when, using the bronchoscope, but because she's so young, a more permanent solution needs to be found. A meeting with her colleagues next Friday should determine the next course of action. In the average adult, the trachea is 11 to 12 centimetres long. I suspect that Kez's is shorter than that because she's so petite. If she has the resection, it'll mean removing about 4 centimetres, which could be almost half, I guess. I find that a bit daunting, especially in someone so young. I've also learned some worrying information regarding tracheal resection, and my concerns for her future are growing. It'll now be 4 weeks before we know what's going to happen. Kez has got to have another CT scan to determine exactly how much of the tumour is covering the outside of the trachea. The surgeon believes that the tumour will peel away from the esophagus, reducing the need for further intervention in that area. A work colleague has shown me an article in the newspaper recently about groundbreaking surgery on a 10-year-old boy who has had a complete windpipe replacement using stem cells from his own body. I read it with interest, but really it means nothing to me. My head is full of too much information already. We hear that Kez's op is scheduled for the 28th of April. The day arrives and Kez is taken down to theatre. Her dad and I go for a walk around London. An hour or so later, we get a call from the hospital to tell us that Kez is back on the ward. There's no further information and we hurry back, very concerned about what we're going to be told. The news isn't good. After having a good pre-op look around, it's been decided to do further tests. The tumour is far more advanced than at first thought, and it's looking like Kez will need a permanent tracheostomy. Kez is discharged home, and a further MRI and PET scan are booked for the following week. Joe whisks Kez off to a very nice hotel for the weekend to give her a break from all the rubbish that's going on. I'm so glad he's there for her. She's been leaning on him a lot, which lessens the pressure on me and means I've got more energy for when I really need it. Joe is amazingly resilient for someone so young and shows no signs of running away. He can't be finding any of this easy. I believe there's something very special between him and Kez, and feel so sad for this unwanted disruption in their young lives. Joe's mum Glenda tells me that Joe recently said, "I've only just found her, and now it looks like I might lose her." I find I don't even want to go there. I've suggested to Kez that we take one day at a time, starting with a prayer to help us through. I'm hoping we can enjoy every day that's good and take something positive from the days that are bad. We now have the Macmillan nurses on board, who are very supportive, and hopefully Kez will get to do some nice stuff of her choosing while she's having treatment. She could have a day out at a spa or see a celebrity at the O2, for example. She also has a psychologist who she's meeting with after the tests on Tuesday. The psychologist is accessible for all of us as well. I'm very impressed with the amount of support available, but I wish so much that none of this was happening. After the MRI and PET scans, Kez returns home while we wait to hear what's going to happen next. She seems pretty clear in her own mind that she'll refuse a permanent tracheostomy. If this becomes the only option, I've no idea what will happen. On a positive note, we all seem to be sleeping well, and I'm able to report that I generally feel peaceful about everything, aware that I'm far calmer than I should be in the circumstances, and am able to rise above all the emotional pain I would expect to be feeling. I can only attribute this to the power of the prayers being lifted up by so many on our behalf. I personally am struggling with how to pray, because I understand this is all happening for a reason and that it's part of God's plan for our lives. So all I can pray is that His will be done, and that by His grace we'll have the strength to go through whatever is thrown at us. It's the 7th of May 2010, and Kez has finally finished her hairdressing apprenticeship. Let's rejoice in the good news that from today she's now a fully qualified hairdresser. This has given her a big boost, but I've noticed I'm getting a lot more hugs from her than usual, and I catch her staring off into space every now and then. I can only imagine what must be going on inside her head. 4 days later, on the 11th of May, I receive an email from Kez's uncle in Italy, who has experience of translating medical research papers. He tells me he's been in touch with a Professor Macchiarini, a pioneering surgeon in the kind of surgery that Kez needs. I realise this is the same surgeon who was involved with the groundbreaking windpipe transplant on the 10-year-old boy earlier in the year. The professor is at a conference in London until Friday, and he's interested in meeting with Kez. We agreed to meet up on the 13th of May, and the team at Guy's have agreed to release all scans and documentation for his perusal. They explain that they've had minimal involvement in the kind of surgery that Kez needs, and admit that her situation is proving a challenge for them. They're interested in hearing what the professor has to say. The meeting is very difficult. The scans need to be examined in detail, but a cursory look at the notes we've handed over prompts the professor to reveal what no one else has yet confirmed to us. This is a highly malignant cancer, and Kez is going to die if it isn't removed. He tells us he may be able to offer something different to Guy's proposal, but that Kez will have to be extremely brave. He explains that the chances of her surviving surgery are high, but it's unclear what will happen afterwards because the treatment is experimental. He wants us to go away and think about it. The next day, we return to Guy's hospital to be confronted with some devastating news. The MRI shows that the tumour has grown round the thyroid, esophagus and the laryngeal nerves. It's also invaded the subglottis. We've been told that by only peeling away the tumour from the surrounding tissue will leave too many residual cancer cells for radiotherapy to remove. The PET scan shows no evidence of cancer anywhere else in Kez's body. The proposed treatment is removal of the thyroid gland, permanent tracheostomy with the removal of the laryngeal nerves, taking away her natural voice forever. Also an esophageal resection, with the stomach being moved above the lungs to fill the gap left from the removal of all the tissue in the neck. The atmosphere in the room is heavy with despair. Kez is starting to break down, and I reach out to her, holding her close to me, while she weeps tears of desperation. How can this be happening? Everything feels surreal, and I know beyond doubt that each one of us in that room is grieving horribly for her, knowing that not one of us can offer her any hope at all. But I also know that Kez is feeling very angry inside, and she tells me she's going to fight for her life because she's not ready to die yet. Good for her, I think. She may only be on loan to me, but I still believe God's purposes for her life are yet to be fulfilled. That night, my heart is beating so fast, I wake my husband Rob and ask him to call an ambulance. I'm not aware of feeling anxious or afraid, and I truthfully believe there's something wrong. Rob calmly takes my hand and says I need to relax, speaking soothing words to me until my breathing steadies and my heart rate returns to normal. He says he knows it's anxiety because he's experiencing the same thing. I start to research Professor Macchiarini on the internet to glean as much information as possible. I also research everything I can about adenoid cystic carcinoma and trachea transplants. All of it looks bleak, but not as bleak as Guy's proposal. A speck of hope is better than no hope at all. We're about to embark on a journey that's as exhilarating as it's heartbreaking, but it's the only way to go.